hours of Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Man, we lock up, man. I don't care what nobody say about us. We played the best defense in the league. I snapped that. And we're going to have 2-3 people on the all defensive teams. You know what I'm saying? And I might be on one of them. You know what I'm saying? But, nah, we definitely can win the games on the defensive end, man. Everybody, boxes and elbows. Make them make the next pass. You know what I'm saying? That's what it was about tonight. Don't let Giannis beat us. I mean, he still went for, I think, like 40, but we won. So the game plan works for sure.
Judd, get the flag.
Get the flag. Get the flag, Judd.
Right, here it is.
The flag.
Here it is.
The
Hold
flag.
Get him.
I
Get
am.
him, Wolves.
Oh, no, Mike. Sorry. Oh, there. It froze up.
Okay,
it froze up. Oh, we're back. We're back.
There we go.
We're back.
To be clear.
I love it. We're just going to use the wild flag for everything.
No, to be clear, we are efforting from the organization today a similar Wolves flag. So
Okay.
we have a Wolves flag because when you are going to win the LOB, we can't be waving a state of hockey flag for you.
LOB. I heard there was about 6 Timberwolves fans up in the corner last night at the new Milwaukee Arena. LOB. This is Reckless Speculation Thursday here on Mackey and Judd to all those who celebrate. Darren Doogie Wolfson, our friend from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department, the Scoop podcast, he brings inside information about your favorite Minnesota sports teams. Doogie, the only information we want today is where will the parade route be for the Timberwolves, who I think clinched at least the 10 seed last night with a win on the road against the champs.
Good morning, gentlemen. Happy Reckless Speculation Thursday. I know this much. Downtown St. Paul, if there was any thought of having to go St. Paul to Minneapolis, downtown St. Paul is a pig bleep right now. Downtown Minneapolis, Hennepin Avenue, some construction. So I guess like First Ave,
Washington Ave?
maybe follow the Lynx template from a few years ago. I don't remember the exact route the Lynx took for, their multiple parades. But yeah, last night was fun. I will say this much. Encouraging when the Wolves had, 8 or 9 more turnovers than Milwaukee, shot, 29% from 3, yet found a way to win. Now, I did think Milwaukee missed a lot of pretty good looks. Like, Milwaukee couldn't make a 3 last night. They were down Drew Holiday and Brooke Lopez. I think it's fair to mention that pretty early in this conversation. But nonetheless, for a franchise that hasn't won in Milwaukee in a really long time, I think the last time they won there was, 2013? Super, super encouraging.
The Bucks in that building, I think the stat Dave Benz gave was like 123 games since they went into Pfizer Forum, had never trailed start to finish until the Minnesota Timberwolves showed up last night and, as Brad Childress would say, imposed their will. Okay,
he would have said it more like
if Milwaukee scores the first basket, it's 2-0, right? They have a lead.
You know what? Yes. Why are you trying to rain on the literal parade? That, by the way, and you guys are missing the point.
Yes. The Wolves are back. The Wolves are back.
Here's the parade route. Forget Minneapolis. Forget St. Paul. The parade's going to be in Laurierville. Mark Laurierville.
That's not what he's calling it.
Utopia.
The future. It's what I'm calling it, and I'm helping him out with it. Okay, I don't want to talk about it too much, but what I'm saying is the futuristic city that Marky and I are going to build is where the damn parade is going to be. Okay, forget A-Rod. A-Rod's out of this thing. This is going to be a Zolgad Laurie production. There will be buildings named after me, but we're going to allow him to name it Laurieville.
Okay, guy.
Judd Center. Yeah, that'll be pretty nice.
Actually, Doogie, do you have any inside information about Alex Rodriguez's selfie picture? What lake was it on? Was it a green screen? Do we know? Was it a green screen?
I saw your tweet. It made me chuckle. I don't know the lake. I presume Minnetonka, but I don't know that for sure.
And what was blurred out?
I don't know what was blurred
out.
Yeah, I'm curious like you are. I don't know what the heck was blurred out.
Does he blur it out? Does his social guy blur it out?
I'm sure his social. He has an entourage. He has a team. You would have been blown away at Media Day to see the amount of people following him around. And I told you, he was wearing makeup Everything about him is scripted, is calculated. Yeah. Now, it's to his credit. He has built an empire, but there's not a lot of whole lot of ad-libbing there. There's not a lot of, flying by the seat of his pants.
Listen,
And,
as long as he
stays
out of the way. Just stay out of the way. Just stay out of the way at this point.
Make no mistake about this, Phil. Mark Lowry of the two has the bigger influence. And let's not forget Glenn Taylor is still in charge for the next couple of years. In fact, small world, I ran into a pretty good NBA source at the gas station the other day over at Costco. And he reminded me, because we were talking about the possibility of Lowry, A-Rod going for a big splash for president of operations next summer. Some of the Masai Ujiri talk we brought up, Judd, on Tuesday. The Elton Brand name is out there, Landry Fields, maybe a Calvin Booth. And this individual reminded me, Glenn is still looking to save money where he can. That if the Wolves have a productive year, everybody loves Sachin Gupta, that they can save money hiring Sachin Gupta as their president of operations.
Wait, but would at some point in time here, would Lowry especially step in and say, "Oh, Glenn, hold on a second here. I don't own the team officially yet, but I'm an investor by now. I'm willing to pick up a bit of the tab here." Like, is that transferable? Because, like, if Glenn is going to Glenn for 2.5 more years, that's going to derail possibly some really good ideas that could be brought. And Mark is at games. Like, we've talked about this. He is very active already. So this is not like he's sort of waiting in the wings for his turn. Couldn't he step in here and offer to facilitate some things that would make Glenn not as important financially?
Yes, he could. Yeah, Judd. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the short answer is yes. The longer form answer would be, we've seen it over the years that Glenn can be influenced. It's not like Glenn years ago wanted to trade Ricky Rubio. Tibbs went to Glenn and said, okay, we need to do this.
Right.
Heck, I'm not convinced that Glenn wanted to fire Gerson Rosas. Like, I don't sense that Glenn drove that bus.
Pretty good. Nice
Now it might not have taken a whole lot of influencing of Glenn once the evidence was presented. But yeah, like, Glenn can be influenced on a lot of different things. So yes, I can see that scenario unfolding where Lowry is able to convince Glenn, hey, this move makes sense. Yes, I'm involved enough, including financially. Let's do this. And Glenn says, yeah, go ahead. You have my blessing.
So, Dukes, I know you've got some information. We'll get to a player that was linked to the Wolves a few months ago that you want to talk about again. But just as far as this team and the current roster and the 3-1 start, Anthony Edwards just seems like he's becoming the vocal leader in a lot of ways, and obviously the talent we're seeing on the court. I mean, he finished that game last night with a drive to the hoop, left-handed, knocks down a couple free throws. Cat changing his demeanor from those Pelicans games where he was just apoplectic at the officials for 2 hours, and last night he went he just went into silent cyborg mode. What are you hearing just about the makeup of this team and the start and everything we've seen so far in the first couple weeks?
Well, I mean, there's certainly a nice little buzz. I mean, they anticipate a pretty good crowd on Saturday night for the Nuggets. By the way, we'll wait and see if Nikola Jokic plays on Saturday. He's dealing with a knee injury. Denver has a back-to-back. So do they hold him back from one of those two games? So could the Wolves catch a break in that regard? Then they get the Clippers here a couple times in the next week and a half. The Clippers. I mean, I watched some of that game last night against Cleveland. My guy, JB Bickerstaff. The Clippers look atrocious. So the Wolves' schedule is favorable for the next couple weeks with all these home games. I think, there's some people in the front office, Phil, that will tell you the roster still needs work, right? Like, we've seen the rebounding issues, right? And Jared Vanderbilt, him playing more minutes, depending on matchups, certainly can help. He helped a lot last night. I thought Vanderbilt was excellent.
He was great
last night, but they clearly need more size. The backup 5 is an issue. They need a starting power forward. So the roster is incomplete. That being said, the roster, in my opinion, as currently constructed when looking at the landscape of the Western Conference, does allow them a pretty good opportunity to be one of those top 10 teams. When you're talking about a 67% chance to make the playoffs, 10 out of 15 teams will make the playoffs. Yes, if you're the 9 or the 10 seed, you can claim, you made the postseason, even if you're one and done in the play-in tournament. This roster, if they don't make a move, I foresee this roster capturing one of those top 10 seeds.
Potential trade targets, if indeed there are changes made.
Well, I mean, Ben Simmons is always going to be the elephant in the room. I checked on him again yesterday. Somebody close to Simmons tells me that Daryl Morey is still asking for the moon. Now, will Morey at some point, I think he will. When, not if, but when will he come off that extremely high asking price? It looks like Philadelphia wants to try and make things work, at least for the near future, maybe not long term, not the 4 years remaining on Simmons' deal. But it's not like if you're the Wolves, it's Simmons or bust. What about this idea? Now, this is more me opining. I will state, for sake of the scoop here, that I know that the Wolves, there are people in the front office that are fans of Myles Turner. Big man, Indiana Pacers. Mm-hmm. Now, it's been some foul trouble. Indiana is not off to a good start. He hasn't played a lot in some fourth quarters. I just wonder. Now, it's not like anything is imminent. I think most teams wait, 20, 25 games to really formulate strong opinions about their roster. And if Myles Turner is made available, the Boston Celtics, some other teams would certainly try. But I think the Wolves would try. That Turner could be a fit next to Cat. Led the NBA in block shots a year ago. He can make some threes. I think Myles Turner would help the Wolves. I don't know if there's a match. Like, does Malik Beasley do anything for Indiana? You'd have to include, I think, at least one future first, maybe lottery protected, maybe multiple future first. But what I'm getting at is, if it gets to that point, the way this thing is trending with the Pacers not playing well under new leadership with Rick Carlisle back as head coach, that would be a name that I would keep an eye on. You don't need to necessarily just keep an eye on Ben Simmons.
Okay. Yeah, this is going to be interesting because, if you would have asked me after the Pelicans game, all right, what are your thoughts, on trades and Ben Simmons? And I would have said, all right, I'm good on D'Lo. I don't need another 2 for 10, out of context. And he gets a little out of context and out of the offense every night. Last night, he played well.
Well, he played well, Phil, because he's an elite shot maker. How many times have I said that, Judd? I brought that up on Tuesday in our conversation. He is not an elite playmaker, so there are still warts with Russell's game. But he is an elite shot maker. We saw that on display last night.
But he can't. But if you're going to be an elite shot maker, you can't do what you did at home against the Pelicans for the first half. Elite shot makers don't just disappear and go over and then okay, to try to play catch up.
If your shot isn't falling, you need to involve
it.
your teammates. You need to make an impact on the defensive end.
Yeah.
That's where D'Angelo still has a ways to go.
Yep. And so I want to see this current collection for another month. And then if the Ben Simmons and the Myles Turners, or if those guys are still available, which Ben Simmons will be, then all right, let's. But I'm sort of off of once August was gone and training camp started in September, and all right, this is the collection. Let's see what they can do. Now they're off to a good start, and I just do because I want to see this for one more month, I guess.
Well, and I think Sachin does too. I think others with the Wolves also want to see this for a good another month to 6 weeks. They haven't talked, Phil, unless something changed in the last 24 to 48 hours. They have not talked to Philadelphia for multiple weeks now.
Interesting.
So we can have fun talking about Ben Simmons. Yes, Gupta, shortly after taking over for Rosas, planted the seed with Philadelphia. But since then, my understanding is there has not been any dialogue, the Wolves with the Sixers.
Reckless speculation.
So, Duke, how much credit does Chris Finch get here? Because it feels like, one, I like the construction overall of this team. I think Pat Bev brings a lot as far as the locker room goes. But Chris Finch, just with his adjustments, with his ability in game to make them, it feels like there's a difference here in coaching that and it's almost in some ways, I think the best word is galvanized, that we have not seen here in quite some time. And that includes Tibbs, because I never knew, Tibbs is a good coach, but I never knew.
He's a great coach. Yeah.
But I never knew if that roster was on the same page as Tibbs.
No, exactly. That's it.
It feels like Finch has these guys on the same page and basically doing what he wants without him being flashy or a guy who's calling to himself for attention much.
That's a good way of putting it. I mean, he can coach them with some tough love, but he's gotten to know these guys. He traveled all across the country in the summer, spending some individual time with Russell, with Towns, with Anthony Edwards, really connecting with these guys. That allows him, the example I always use. Now, it's not exactly apples and apples, but Greg Popovich for so many years was able to coach Tim Duncan really hard. Like, he was the rare superstar, that you could coach incredibly hard. I'm not suggesting that Chris Finch can coach Cat quite like that at this point, but it's trending in that direction. I think he's masterful at using his timeouts. I thought he used his timeouts really well last night.
Yeah.
I loved the starting lineup adjustment with Vanderbilt last night. We know he's a brilliant offensive mind, but so far the defense, for the most part, has been pretty good. Now that's, some of Elston Turner's influence. But yeah, I mean, he was a guy that was starving for an opportunity. He was due to be a head coach. He was somebody that Gerson Rosas identified years ago. Remember, when Gerson hired Ryan, there was buzz then that Chris Finch was his guy. So Gerson, and, I love the Beverly edition as well. That was Gerson as well. So, just in terms of the on-the-court product, we can give Gerson some love. We're not defending his off-the-court actions, but on the court, Gerson did have this thing going in the right direction.
What did you think, just from a Chris Finch standpoint, down the stretch? At one point they had a 20-point lead in the second quarter or whatever it was. But, they had like a 10-point lead late in the fourth, and I think at one point it was like 15, and the Bucks start whittling it down, and you're sitting there. You've watched enough Timberwolves games the last 15 years. It just felt like, oh, well, here it is. Of course they're going to come back down 15 in the last minute and a half. And I want to say they cut it to like 2, and there's probably 40 seconds left or something.
Yeah, 108, 106, wasn't it? Middleton somehow had his toe on the line. I thought it was a three-pointer in the corner that would have, if it was a three, would have made it a 1-point game.
Yep. And in my head, I'm like, well, that's, Chris Finch is going to call a timeout here. And he didn't. He didn't call a timeout. He let
was that next possession the Anthony Edwards going on Middleton, going with the left hand?
So Anthony Edwards dribbles the ball up court.
Finish. Yeah.
And D'Lo comes over to grab the ball like in the half court because he usually would set up the offense in that situation. And Ant just kind of turned his back and respectfully waved him off. Goes to his left hand. I mean, it was a superstar sequence, both I think from Ant's standpoint and Chris Finch. I think a lot of coaches call timeout in that spot. And sometimes when you call timeout, you think, oh, we're going to stop their momentum and recollect ourselves. But you're also like, when you call timeout there, you're also like telling your team, I feel really nervous about the spot that we're in right now. By not calling a timeout, he empowers them to figure it out on their own. It's the old Phil Jackson tactic from, back in the 90s, and I loved it in that moment.
Plus, you allow the Bucks in that instance to set their defense. Budenholzer is a really good tactician, so you give him the opportunity to do some different things. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the way, because enough games will come down to a few possessions late. That, to me, is the recipe, Phil, for them winning. That if D'Lo and Cat, Jim Pete on the telecast brought up a point that was one of the best games he's ever seen Cat play. Now, this is year 7. I'd have to kind of spin my brain, but I'll trust Jim Pete on that it's among his 5 or 10 best games ever. But I think for them to close a lot of games, the ball needs to be in Anthony Edwards' hands.
And by the way,
he needs to be the alpha.
Jim Pete said that, and like you'd look at the box score, you'd be like, what do you mean? He only had 3 rebounds, and he turned the ball over 7 times. I think Jim Pete's talking about his demeanor. I think he's talking about the compete. Like, he was going up against Giannis for large chunks of that night. And, of course, like, you're going to turn the ball over sometimes against Giannis. But he had 2 or 3 key blocks, including one. I think 2 of his key blocks were like in the last 5 minutes of the game. And he was really efficient. Like, it doesn't take him 30 shots to get 25 points. I think it took him like 13 shots to get 25 points last night. And
correct.
so
I mean, he's had better scoring games, Phil, but look at shots attempted, look at shot selection.
Yes.
In those games. So if you're just looking at the box score, it can be misleading. So yeah, it's a lot of what you just said, why he was so efficient last night.
When Jim made that comment, he said, statistically, it's not going to look like this. And you basically might think I'm crazy for saying it, but he has been efficient, and he clearly also, and I think it's Finch. Somebody got to him after that Pelicans debacle and said, "You are killing us with these." And Jim Pete flat out said, and his best observation of the night is Cat is almost Zen-like, because he showed no emotion, like he wasn't cringing and making faces, and he basically just played. And in fact, I thought one of the most important sequences was a really small one. When Cat was on Giannis, I think there was a point, it might have been in the first half, where it was just clear that he had a full head of steam to the basket. And when he's coming down that lane, you ain't stopping him. And Carl just moved out. Like, he's just like, oh, so like instead of taking the foul or like being, it's a charge, it's a charge. Carl just sort of moved out. He scored the 2 points. But I mean, that's the type of thing that's progress, because it's not a foul then, it's not a debate, and you can come back and score. So I thought that was huge, just as far as a very small point of emphasis for how Carl altered things. And I think that's got to come from Finch, who said, live to fight another play instead of fighting every single play.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, Monday, those antics can't happen. So, yeah,
correct.
Tuesday in practice, yeah, I mean, I think it was Finch. You know, I wouldn't be shocked if it was Beverly as well. But, yeah, I think, you know, some people got to Cat. I'll also say that you know, whether it's subtly or you know, obvious, that within the flow of a game, like, there were some close calls. Like, the refs could have blown the whistle on Cat some different times late in the game. They chose not to. And I can't help but wonder, you know, him, you know, not saying anything to the officials first half, third quarter, you know, does that enter the officials' mind saying, okay, you know, Cat's been a good guy tonight. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt on these close calls late.
Yeah. Yep. Dukes, we got a few minutes left with you here until you have to go to your A job. Wild, we've got some COVID issues, it sounds like. Vikings, give us some other scoops here on the Twin Cities sports scene.
Yeah, well, I mean, kudos to Declan. So Tuesday morning, he told me, hey, you need to check on the potential of a COVID, you know, mini outbreak. I don't know if outbreak's the right word, but some positive COVID cases with the Wild. Soon thereafter, Michael Russo of The Athletic tweeted out some news, but Declan was all over it. I sent a couple texts, but didn't get any texts immediately back. But anyway, now where we can advance it is, I don't know if this is out there or not, and I don't have the names, but my understanding is 2 players. It is 2 players that have tested positive. So presumably the Wild need to make a roster move or two heading into tonight's game in Seattle.
Yeah, they're going to do another test this morning. Russo just tweeted out a couple minutes ago. So 2 players did test positive. If they test positive again, there's concerns too that there could be more positive tests as well. So there could be a potential outbreak for the team.
Yeah, and we had the 2 on KSTP.com last night. But again, you know, Declan was driving the bus
200-foot game
on that scoop.
200-foot game.
Sounds like Declan tested positive for scoops.
Well, about a year ago, I tested positive for COVID, almost to the date. So, yeah.
As for the Vikings, I mean,
Happy
Judd, I thought
anniversary.
you brought up, let's reiterate the point you made on Tuesday about Michael Pierce, that elbow situation likely will need some sort of surgical procedure at some point, but can you protect the elbow with a brace more short term? He can play through it, then get it fixed after the season. Somewhat discouraging that he wasn't able to practice on Wednesday. You know, he was out there, he was stretching, he was doing some arm twirls, you know, so we'll wait and see what takes place when they hit the practice field at 1:30 this afternoon, but certainly not good news. Now, internally, there was some optimism that it would just be 2 games, that he missed the Lions and the Panthers games, has the bye week, that he would be okay to play on Sunday, but when you don't practice on Wednesday, it's somewhat discouraging. If you don't practice on Thursday, you pretty much have very little chance to play on Sunday.
Yeah. The Dak thing's interesting. What do you think? So these next 4 games here for the Vikings, this is going to tell us pretty much everything we need to know about how good they are. I think a lot of people are having a hard time figuring out, okay, they're 3-3, but they could be 5-1, but they also could be 1-5. So what's your outlook overall, assuming, you know, relatively decent health for this team, the next 4 games starting with Dallas here?
Well, I mean, it's inconsistency, right, Phil? I mean, it's all those penalties against Arizona, then they fix that, but then there's all those penalties against Carolina. So, I mean, just you can point to all sorts of inconsistencies across the board. I struggle to come up with 7 playoff teams in the NFC. Now, my math was off the other day, Judd, when I went through the obvious ones where you have the Cardinals and the Rams. You have the Packers. I left out the Packers in our conversation on Tuesday. You've got the Cowboys. You've got the Bucks. Maybe the Saints. Like, are the Saints the 6th seed? But then who is that 7 seed? The Bears, the Niners, the Falcons. The Vikings are better than those teams.
Agreed.
So I still think there's a path, even if they end up 8-9, 9-8, that they can land the 7 seed. The bigger question is, okay, you're the 7 seed. You open up wild card weekend at 2 seed, let's say Tampa, or 2 seed Dallas. Let's say, okay, you're an underdog heading into that game. You lose that game. Then what? They're stuck in middle purgatory, Phil.
I think,
new coach.
Yeah, I think Zim's out.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah, we don't need to be celebrating 9 wins and a close call against the Bucks on the road. And
don't forget, internally, the expectations were higher entering the year than 9 wins. If it ends up 9-8 with a first-round playoff loss, internally, that would not meet expectations.
And if Mike gets fired, he has to be paid for, I believe, 2 years.
He is signed through the 2023 season.
Correct. And so
makes approximately $8 million a year.
Yes. But that's but I mean, keep in mind, when these guys fired Childress a year before that, they had signed him to an extension that I think went through like 2012 or into 13. So they have paid guys to not work before. I just can't believe that a first round playoff loss is going to be deemed okay now. I gotta think that they have to win at least a playoff game. And if they get blown out in playoff game 2 and embarrassed like I thought they did against the Niners, I would be curious to see then too, because that loss now I don't think would sit well. They got their ass kicked.
Well, I mean, it is comparable though to the 2019 season where if they had lost that game in New Orleans,
right?
Are we currently talking about Kevin Stefanski as the Vikings head coach?
Zim is coming to town. If they had lost, Zim is coming to town Sunday night.
He would be coming to town,
Cowboys head coach.
Absolutely.
But what I'm saying is the Saints win saved them in 2019. I think now if you go and play a second round playoff game, if you win game 1 and then you get your ass kicked again in game 2, I don't know that that's deemed acceptable by the Wilfs this time around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a reminder, by the way, Trayvon Diggs coming to US Bank Stadium on Sunday. He was not the Vikings' next guy after Jeff Gladney. Okay. I'm led to believe it was Jalen Johnson, who ended up in Chicago a few picks later. Trayvon Diggs was a second-round pick. I don't think, if Gladney had gone, let's say, pick 29 or pick 28, the Vikings were keying in on a cornerback with that second first-round pick a couple years ago. My understanding is they were not taking Trayvon Diggs.
All right. Any other quick rapid-fire scoops before we part ways, dude?
Well, we still don't know who won that Gopher basketball secret scrimmage on Saturday in Norman, Oklahoma. I can tell you this much. If the Gophers had won the game, I'm pretty sure I would have heard about it because I did hear that they escaped it completely healthy, no injury. So that is a win since the game is completely meaningless. Nobody even knows technically the game happened. There's no video. There's no pictures.
Hey, I can tell you too.
The standings.
In terms of other secret games, Gophers related, the red team led by Joe Coleman lost to the blue team on the Bachelorette on Tuesday of this week. So I
did see Joe give an emotional shout out to Ken Novak Sr., who passed away a few months ago. Great man from the Hopkins basketball community. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a long year for the Gophers. Trust me, they know that. I was corresponding with one of Ben Johnson's friends the other day, and certainly Ben talked about the scrimmage with this individual. And apparently Ben, the overriding message to his friend was, yeah, I learned a good amount about my team. And I don't think he learned a whole lot of positives about his team. The Parker Fox injury sucks. The Isaiah Enon injury sucks. If those guys were healthy, maybe they could end up competing for the 12th or 13th spot in the Big Ten. Maybe they still do, but we're talking about one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. But give Ben Johnson some time. I am encouraged, very encouraged by the 2022 recruiting class. His staff is relentless. I know one of the assistant coaches, Jason Kemp, is on the road right now checking out some 2023 recruits. They are going to be nonstop recruiting, much different from the previous regime.
Awesome. Darren Doogie Wolfson, our friend from the 5 Eyewitness News sports team and the Scoop podcast, and he brings inside information about your favorite Minnesota sports teams.
Bye, Doogie.
Bye, boys. I'm off
right,
to see
see you,
Lindsey
Dukes.
Whalen. See ya.
All right, see you, Dukes.
Reckless
Okay. Whose phone? Is that your
phone's
phone
ringing?
just blowing up right now?
Is Bill Guerin calling you?
Oh, no, you know what
Scoop?
it is? It's one of these, yes, and it's one of these
It's Bill Guerin.
BS call. No, it's from Sanford, Florida.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was one of those BS Amber Alerts or something. Judd, no.
No, I
Yeah,
shut those
Susie's
off.
missing, and
I
Judd
no.
doesn't care.
I shut those off 3 years ago when I was taking a nap and my phone went off. And I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong? What's wrong? And my phone's like literally blowing up. And it's like there's a child who's been taken. And I'm like, that sucks. That's really sad. But I'm on my couch right now.
Oh my God, dude.
So it's not going to help me to know that. So I found the disable button and I'm like, I don't want to. No.
And if it fits, I want to
It
hear what the
upsets me.
hell happened in Seattle last night with this like transformer exploding, Phil. Did like something explode?
Yes. I don't know if it was, I guess I didn't see the actual explosion. I heard it literally right outside our townhouse. But about, I don't know, there was like 10,000 houses without power at midnight last night for probably a 5-hour period. 2 loud explosions, and an electrical pole was on fire across the street.
So it was right by you?
It looked like the end of Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Where the
the
DeLorean takes off and
down.
there's
Yeah.
just random strings of fire. That was
Yeah.
that was my neighborhood last night. So.
Wow. Oh, here come the dog.
speculation.
So this is